you're gonna look great. But if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits.
That's right, man. You tell 'em.
Welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, your registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits.
So I have an interesting debate that we're going to start with. And I know that both of you guys were dealing with this today.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I haven't had to deal with it yet today, although I have a feeling I will, and I have to deal with it all the time. And it's the debate of what is more maddening, dealing with train and subway delays, and of course we're in New York City, so a lot of people listening won't know our pain, but there's certainly other cities that have similar issues as well. So dealing with subway and train delays, public transportation delays, or having to find parking. I'll open the floor. Tony, you want to start?
Well, considering I just looked for parking for 45 minutes and finally find a spot, but actually, I'm going to say the train delays for the fact that as I was driving, it was actually a humbling experience because every time I would get like upset or angry, like thinking it was a spot and it wasn't, I'd look out and it's freezing here right now in New York City. The wind is going at like 100 miles per hour. And I'd be like seeing people, like I felt bad, like trying to cross the street, like trying to hold on to their stuff. And I was just like, you know what? At the end of the day, I can't complain. I'm in my car. I'm blessed to be able to have one. And that's what got me through. And then I finally found a spot. Luckily, thanks to you for giving me a suggestion of where to go.
I think that when you drive, I don't drive, but I think there's some common sense that goes into it, and some of it you just kind of accept, like it's going to be hard to, like you're mentally prepared to some extent. Like when you come here driving in the middle of the day, you kind of know it's not going to be easy finding parking, so you're going to probably have to take some time. You know when rush hour is and when there's a lot of traffic. And unless there's a major accident, you kind of like you're mostly it's mostly predictable to an extent.
Right.
Where the subways can be like sometimes like when the subways work, they run great, but they're far too often they don't.
Yeah.
And like I'll give you an example of like something new. You see something new every day. It's no secret that like the homeless problem in New York has been growing over the past 4 or 5 years, and. Often when I get up in the morning, there'll be someone on a train with like, a lot of their belongings and stuff. But usually that consists of a couple of bags or whatever. So anyway, or maybe a cart. But I was late for a class, and it was middle of the day. It was like 12 o'clock, and the trains are a bit messy where I am anyway in the middle of the day because they do their construction like kind of after the morning rush and between the evening rush. So anyway, I'm running late. I get to the stop to switch trains, and there's a train in station. It's like perfect, because I needed that train to be there. I get to the train, and no one's on the train, and the conductor is announcing, this train's out of service due to something. I don't know, something's wrong with the train. So it's like, all right, great. And they're like, there's a train right behind this. We're leaving the station. A couple minutes pass, train's not going anywhere. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Why isn't I'm anxious? I'm late. I gotta text my boss, like I'm, or the manager at this gym. I'm gonna be late for my class. Please let the members know. So I'm like walking up down the platform now to see what's going on, and there's a single door open, and when I look at the inside, there's a homeless guy who has, he had at least 5 giant bags. And I'm not like a duffel bag. I'm saying like somehow he combined like multiple giant trash bags with stuff. Like just massive that he was unloading. So one thing after the next, he's unloading just one, and I'm saying like I can't stress how huge these bags were. I don't know what he had in them, but he's pulling these things off. And there's a part of me, it's like, I feel bad, obviously, but then like, it's still like, why did this guy with everything in this one train car have to be on the one train that has to be taken out of state? Because now he's got to remove all of his stuff. Yeah. And then finally, like one woman who must have been in a rush too, just said, screw it, and jumped on the train and started helping the guy take his stuff off. So finally he got his stuff off, and the train left, and there was a train right behind it. I got there like 10 minutes late. But yeah, it was my New York train story. So.
Well, so that's why the car is better, because that was an elaborate story, but that was one story. And I've taken public transportation before. I used to live in Brooklyn, so that was like a norm for me. And yes, when I had my car in Brooklyn, that was annoying looking for parking. But then like getting on the subway and like having random people like, there's plenty of car space, but let me sit right next to you.
Oh, now we're starting to get into separate issues.
Well, I was going to say, like, also being a woman on public transportation, you deal with probably a whole lot more issues than either of us will have to ever deal with, which is a whole issue in and of itself.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you guys a story, and this is in favor of parking, because sometimes it's not just about looking for a parking spot, but dealing with the signs and stuff like that.
Well, yeah.
So,
I used to get a lot of tickets until I learned to really read the signs.
You learn how to navigate that, but they're changing things. So just the other day, I drove down to my girlfriend's, and ever since I have been down there have been metered parking with a Mooney meter for an hour. So you can park there, right, for an hour and then do what you got to do. And then, that's that. And there was usually parking that I could find there. So I drove there at a time of the day where oftentimes there's no one parked there on the street. So I went in, I parked, I put my credit card into the Mooney meter, I hit max time because that's what I've always done, and I did max time because it takes forever, so I hit it, and then I hit print receipt, and then I'm looking at it, and it said 3 hours, $15. I'm like, what? To park on the street? That's weird. And then I looked up, and they had changed the signs to commercial parking only till 7 p.m. So I couldn't even use the Mooney meter I bought because now I wasn't even allowed to legally park on that side.
Wow.
Ooh, this should be a GymWits ventilation system episode.
No, but also because, like, obviously the car I guess you could debate where you're coming from, but the car usually is more expensive too, because if you can't find a spot, then you have to pay for a spot.
Oh, yep.
Versus like maybe $5 subway round trip, versus anywhere the cheapest, like you just said, for $15 for 3 hours, or even if you go into a parking garage if you're going to be there for an hour, they charge you a flat fee of like $15. So, you have to think about that part too. It's expensive. So it might be worth dealing with some of the stuff that you have to deal with in the subway if it, saves you some money.
All right, I think we've thoroughly gotten.
We
that
could
off
probably
of
go on that for a long
gripes.
time. That could be a really, really long episode. We'll cut it short because I think people want to learn about intermittent fasting.
It's like they didn't come on to hear us vent about transportation issues. Although I'm sure many people can sympathize.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
Intermittent fasting. People keep asking me about it. So
yes, and I've been seeing a ton of ads that really annoy me. And I saw one guy posted a video about intermittent fasting, and he said, look at me, I'm in great shape. I eat whatever I want. And he was like almost bragging to the camera. He had a big bacon cheeseburger, and he was eating that. He's like, see, I eat whatever I want. The way I do it is intermittent fasting. I don't eat in the morning or in the afternoon. I wait till about 6 o'clock or whenever to eat. I have all this energy, and I eat whatever I want because I'm getting my daily caloric needs, and because I'm eating later, I only 1 or 2 meals, and I can get all my caloric needs in, and I can eat whatever I want. And there was a few things that instantly just got under my skin. The first of which, and I'm sure there's going to be, we have a ton of talking points, but my initial thought was, all right, great, you're in your early 20s, you're in good shape, you can go to the gym, right? You are not a spokesman for the majority of the world. So that was something that initially just irked me, but all right, let's get into many of the other talking points.
To be fair, I think that would irk you about pretty much any advertisement in fitness and nutrition. You've got somebody who's in really good shape saying, hey, this works for me. So that's just, that's marketing.
Absolutely.
So I'm not mad at the guy. I think he's fine.
Well, when you speak, when you give out advice to the masses and you use yourself as an example when you are not necessarily, it's not indicative of what other people are going through or their conditions, you have all the right in the world to do it. You can say anything you want, but the people listening need to say, well, buyer beware.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right. So anyway, now that we've vented a little bit more, what is intermittent fasting?
Yeah. So intermittent fasting is basically deciding that you're purposely going to go a period of time without eating. So intermittent fasting could look different for everyone. And, people do it for a number of different reasons, but there's really no clear definition of how they're going to do the fast. It's just purposely telling yourself, I'm not going to eat for a prolonged period of time, and then I'll break that fast at a certain time. So we'll go into like what that equals for different people and all those things, but that's like the most basic definition.
Is there like a standard for like what amount of time is the minimum you need to go without eating to be considered intermittent fasting?
So like there's no studies that say like this amount of hours is better. I'd say probably like a more realistic window of what we're talking about is more like 10 to 16 hours. The advanced fasters will do like a 16-hour fast, whereas like maybe if you're just starting out, like 10-hour fast. So part of it could be when you're sleeping.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so like it doesn't necessarily. It could be literally like your last meal is at 7 p.m. And then you eat again at like 6 or 7.
But then would that mean then a lot of people would be unknowingly doing it? Let's say you sleep 8 hours. Let's say your last meal.
That's like I guess like what a beginner guide would be to an intermittent fasting. And we'll go into like all the different strategies and like how or why it works and if it's good or not and blah blah blah.
Okay.
But yeah.
No, why would someone do it?
So some people do it. I guess we could start where what you were kind of saying with like that advertisement. I think some people are looking to do it as like a quick fix to weight loss. And as you guys know, there are no quick fixes to weight loss. And that it definitely doesn't negate, like if you're choosing a period of time to eat, that doesn't mean you can have whatever you want in between. And I think that's a big misconception that I just kind of want to say right off the bat is that if you are doing intermittent fasting, you're still supposed, the intention is still to eat healthy, well-balanced meals and everything we've always talked about. So it doesn't negate poor eating habits or a poor diet. So some people might do it for like a quick fix to weight loss. Some people might just do it for improved digestion because they've heard that it's better for them. Some people, there are claims that it helps with, lowering cholesterol, helping insulin resistance. I mean, there's so many different claims out there. We'll get into the science in a little bit, but, or sometimes it's just an easier like black or white answer for people. It's like knowing I can eat at this time and at this time. It kind of helps them to, I guess, focus on their diet a little bit better. So it's just another strategy I think people kind of use.
For a short period, I was doing something like, not for like, it actually saved me money. Cause like what I would do is, breakfast, I didn't necessarily need it. But what I would spend a lot of money and eat poorly in the morning because I didn't have time. Mm-hmm. And so that was just like, I usually eat lunch around 10:30, 11 o'clock anyway. So I was like, I'll just wait till 10:30, 11. And all of a sudden, like, it was fine. I wasn't that hungry and I was able to save some money. And then that ended at some point. But it did actually work for a little while.
Well, so it depends on, like, so there's pros and cons to that in the sense of, the pro would be, like you said, you save money, and if you're still like, it didn't make you hungry or you didn't end up overeating because of it, and you still had a balanced like regular lunch, that's fine. The problem is it's a missed opportunity for nutrition, right? And we all, you've heard for years, breakfast is the most important meal. So, how are you jumpstarting your metabolism? Like if it's going to offset your whole day to not have breakfast, or if you exercise in the morning and you need food for fuel to help you, whatever it is, then that might not be the time for you to do it if you're looking to do it. Intermittent fasting is not for everyone. I'll kind of just jump and just say right off the bat, if you're pregnant, please don't do it. If you are diabetic and you have you end up going, there's a chance for you to go into what's called hypoglycemia, where your blood sugars get too low. Don't do it. And just, if you have a negative relationship with food or a history of an eating disorder, or you're just still trying to, break that relationship with food, which is just looking at it as the devil and like looking at it as something that's not good for us, like that, this is not going to be for you, because food really is fuel. Food is really there to help us, to heal us. So to think of it as, I'm not eating as a way to lose weight, or, that's not why you want to be doing it. Some people do it for religious reasons, so I have to respect that, or, there's other things, but, where's the intention behind it?
Now, what does the science say? Like, where's the research lie on intermittent fasting?
Right now it's really inconclusive, and there's a lot of various studies. Some studies support that it helps with lowering your cholesterol. Other studies say that it stresses the heart and puts you at a greater risk for heart disease. Some studies show that it works better for men than for women. Some studies are showing that people actually who are on like a weight loss regimen, right, that it's easier for them to have maybe one way to do intermittent fasting is it's like a 5 and 2 schedule, which means that for 2 days out of the week, your calorie intake is around 500 if you're a female, 500 calories for 2 days a week, 600 calories if you're a male for 2 days a week, and the rest of your week is still within like somewhat of a calorie deficit, but not as extreme. And there's some studies that support that people do better that way. And it's easier for them to maintain that. So it's kind of all over the place. But what I will say is we really don't know right now. And once again, just from, I guess, my own personal opinion, and I don't really want to go that route for the whole show, but just to kind of say, like, it really is dependent on this person's status of where they are right now. I would say, like, if you're still working on just basic healthy eating behaviors, for an example of that would be like if you're still drinking, soda and juice and, cookies and cakes and all these processed foods, and you're not, fruits and vegetables or like healthy whole grain items are not really in your diet right now, I wouldn't go into intermittent fasting. I would say intermittent fasting is really more for someone who is just already kind of has the fundamentals down, is now looking for an alternative strategy to help them with their progress.
So speaking of the science of it, what happens to your body when you fast? I know we've heard your body goes into starvation mode after 3 hours that you don't eat. What's the deal with that? Does your body go into starvation mode? Like, what is happening to your body when you fast?
Right. So it wouldn't be 3 hours. That's where, like, I guess the window, we're not quite sure what it is, but once again, the science right now, we believe that it would go into the muscle, but I think that's really more with prolonged starvation, after maybe a full day of not eating, or a consistency of restriction of calories. So an example of that would be like every day having that only 500 calories. That would be an example of where your body goes into starvation mode. The reason why the term intermittent, it's gotten it's like a buzzword, but it's actually taking a flight, I would say, is because the studies are showing that it's not coming, when you're losing the weight, it's not coming from the muscle like we thought it would. But once again, these studies are not usually done, there's like 2 in humans, so I have to say that. And then also they're not, like, exercise isn't always incorporated with it. And you have to then question, how does someone sustain exercise while, on their fasting days, and all of those other things that factor into it. So currently, once again, more studies need to be done, but it's showing that if you're doing it not every day, maybe every other day, or like 2 days out of the week, that it's not going to tap into your muscle like we thought.
Mm-hmm. So now, if you're on an intermittent fasting type of diet, let's say you're doing it every couple of days, and you're not doing the 5
and 2.
Yeah. So would your calorie number be the same as if you were eating normal? Like, or is there any difference? Would you just have the same amount of calories condensed into a smaller period of time? How would that work?
Yeah. So the idea is, say you're doing the every other day method, it would basically be like, say your one meal is at 2 p.m. on Monday. That would be like that 500 to 600 calorie meal. And then when you break the fast the next day at 2 p.m. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess it would be the full 24 hours. Then you have like a normal eating pattern. You would keep the food like you normally eat. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing, right? If you're not changing anything about what you normally eat, right? Obviously, if you overeat, it's not going to work, right? If you keep what you eat on your regular non-fasting days consistent, and you have a caloric deficit on the alternate days, of course you're going to lose weight, right? So the question then becomes, is it intermittent fasting that's the effective way, or is it just the calorie deficit that's the effective way? You know, so that's where more studies need to be done, because we need to decide, you know, is it really the strategy, or is it just the fact that this person's lost weight? And we know that with weight loss, we see improved numbers in our cholesterol and, you know, at a lower risk for diabetes and all those other things that come with weight loss.
So yes, we all have to eat, but in this modern world, there's a few challenges that we face. We have to do it without breaking the bank, using up all of our precious time, and of course, being able to get healthy foods into our diet.
I can't believe you forgot the most important thing, especially for you. It's got to taste good.
Absolutely.
Fortunately, Freshly has you covered. So Freshly is a meal delivery service that sends freshly, see what I did there? Made meals to your door, made by a chef with the help of nutritionists.
Yes, and they use all natural ingredients, no preservatives. There are vegan options. There are no peanuts. It's gluten-free for anyone that's concerned about that. And it's really easy. You just throw it in your microwave.
Yeah, and we're not going to push something that we don't believe in. And we've tried it, and the meals are really, really good. They represent a great option. I think both Justin and I have issues with either time, even if you take quality out of it, which the quality is great. We have issues when it comes to time and money, you know, for eating. You eat out and it's hard. And so, you know, these can be as little as $8.99 a meal. They're really quick to make, and they're really good. It tastes like something you're getting at a restaurant or you're making at home. It's not like your standard, you know, what you would think of as something that you just throw in a microwave and make. They're actually legitimately good.
Now, I've used other meal delivery services before, the ones where you need to cook your own food, and I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to food preparation, and yet those still took me a long time to make. And quite frankly, some of the meals weren't that good, and oftentimes I was left with a ton of pickled radish or something that I didn't really want to eat at the end of the meal.
And of course, you're left with a ton of dishes at the end of the meal.
Don't remind me.
Well, with Freshly, you don't get any of that. You eat what's there, you throw out the container, and you're done.
Yeah, and you get a ton of options to choose from.
Yeah, there's things like veggie baked penne, buffalo chicken breast, cod cakes, Sicilian-style chicken parm.
I'm getting hungry.
Slow-cooked chili beef, chicken tikka masala, tons of options, both for lunch/dinner, and they also have breakfast options as well. So you're really not at a loss for things to choose from.
Now, the GymWits always talk about that magic bullet. And, you know, if something's too good to be true, well...
Well, if we haven't convinced you with our words, there's not much we can do except to give you $40 off your first 2 orders. So if you go to freshly.com and enter our exclusive promo code, GymWits, all caps, at checkout, you'll get $40 off. So you get to try 6 meals for only $39. And you can decide for yourself if Freshly meets all the criteria that we set.
And that's less than $7 a meal.
Yeah, you really can't beat that. Nope. So try it out. And if you like it, then the GymWits via Freshly have resolved yet another problem in your life. So again, go to freshly.com, use promo code TheGymWits, and try out any of a number of great meals.
And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
So I guess give me an example of like a beginner intermittent fasting program. Let's say somebody who wants to kind of tap their foot in the water or dip their toe in the water. Like what kind of a strategy would they implement?
Okay, I think the best thing to do is start with just one day a week, and be realistic with the schedule for yourself. So I would say, I think that the easiest thing to fast is to do most of it when you're sleeping. I think that would probably be the most helpful for most people. So a good maybe like I think you've probably heard this before, right? We shouldn't eat past 6 o'clock, or you shouldn't eat past 7 o'clock at night, right? So the reason behind that is more of like, we know food is fuel, right? We don't need food to sleep, and then also like that period of time is obviously a smaller, like you're obviously taking in less calories, right? So I think it might be helpful for someone to maybe, you know, have their last meal at whatever that time, dinner time would be, like 6 o'clock, let's say, right? And then they'll wait maybe like a 14 to 16 hour fast is usually, if you're just going to do it one day a week, I probably would say then maybe if you can have your breakfast, say at 10 o'clock the next morning. And, you know, I think always going to be dependent on the person's schedule. That really is going to like help them figure out if this is doable for them. So if you are someone who works out in the morning, let's say, and you do better on an empty stomach. Some people can't work out on a full stomach. We've talked about this before. And, by the time you shower and get to work, you have your breakfast at 10, that might work for you in your schedule. But if you're someone who needs food for fuel and your next day is, your exercise in the morning, I probably wouldn't recommend doing your fasting on the days that you exercise. So once again, it's really dependent on the person's schedule and, what they enjoy. But if you're just getting started, I'd say once a week, just give yourself that cutoff time.
All right. So one thing that immediately comes to mind, and as you guys well know, I'm not a doctor, but with blood sugar and spikes, or potentially people that are diabetic or even pre-diabetic, would seem that this might not be a great choice for them. So who are some other people, and maybe even talk a little bit about diabetics or pre-diabetics as to why this might not be the right choice for them, and maybe some other people that it might not be the right choice for.
Okay. Well, with diabetes, a diagnosis of diabetes, you have the potential of going to hypoglycemia, which is very dangerous. So by not eating, your body can fall into that zone. So we definitely don't want to be doing it. If you're diagnosed with diabetes, and especially if you take medication like insulin or metformin, whatever medications you take for your diabetes, you don't want to do intermittent fasting, because you don't want to go prolonged periods of time without eating, because there's that potential risk. As for pre-diabetes, it could, once again, it's the strategy of weight loss in general. Weight loss in general can help you reduce your risk for developing diabetes. So it might be okay in those situations, but some pre-diabetics are prescribed medication. So if that's the case, then I wouldn't do it, because basically the medication is helping to lower your blood sugar. So if you don't eat on top of that, you have the potential risk of going to hypoglycemia as well. And so we kind of mentioned it earlier, but if you're pregnant, please don't do this, because with fasting, there's restriction, right? You're not getting nutrition, and you need nutrition, your baby needs nutrition. So this would not be for you. And then, people, like I said, if you have an unhealthy relationship with food, and you have if you have a binge eating disorder, or just an eating disorder where food really for you is a struggle every day, this is not a strategy for you either, because it's just going to play into that. It's going to play into like looking forward to your next meal, looking forward to food, or kind of or into the negative mindset. Oh, I'm not eating, so therefore I'm losing weight, and that's what's working for me. So I wouldn't recommend it for those people either.
So you mentioned that the science is a little bit up in the air.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything as far as maybe performance benefits when it comes to sports or athletics? Is there anything out there on that, or is it the same thing?
No,
is that still kind of up in the air?
The studies are showing that there's perceived tiredness for athletes. There's nothing saying that athletes are performing better, but there's also nothing saying that athletes are performing worse right now. But I just, we've talked about before nutrition for endurance. We've had episodes about just like basic nutrition for exercise. And, I saw a huge difference in myself on the days that I would eat the calories that my body needed to train. Also, I didn't have as many injuries, because there were times where I wouldn't get a chance to eat because of work and stuff, and I'd go for a run, and I'd have to be careful. So I wouldn't really recommend also too for athletes, if you are doing intermittent fasting, don't do it on the days that you exercise. Because once again, the studies are not showing anything, but that doesn't mean that it can't be, there's a potential risk there.
Now, what about for mental acuity? We see a lot of buzzy subjects on brain food and stuff like that, which I guess would be an interesting podcast in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Is there any evidence to show that it can affect your focus, your mental strength one way or another? Now, I know for me personally, I'm actually really focused when I don't eat, right? But of course, after a while, then I get fatigued. So there's a sweet spot with that. Right. Have you heard of any evidence, or from your own knowledge, is there any? Would you think there's any benefits to fasting as far as your mental acuity is concerned, or maybe the opposite, maybe that it negatively impacts it?
Well, okay, so when we don't eat for a prolonged period of time, there's people can get tired, fatigue. They're not as alert. They can get really irritable.
Well, of course, the emotional aspect.
Yeah,
too.
right. The hangry thing that occurs that. Yeah, it happens to me too regularly. There's that part. I think what you're describing is if we don't overeat, right, and we eat the right foods, then we feel more energized. So that feeling that when you don't eat, for a short period of time, you're feeling good because your body's like okay right now. But when you get to that prolonged period, that's when that mental alertness kind of goes down. So I think that number is going to be different for everyone of like how many hours that actually is. And then also too, like, what are we doing? Are we doing something that's stimulating our mind in another way? So is it really related to the food, or is it what we're doing, that's kind of we're engaging in our attention in?
So speak a little bit about what you mentioned with, being hangry or irritable. Is that a risk for people that are intermittent fasting or might consider intermittent fasting?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and once again, everyone reacts differently to not eating. Like, I also would say, just going back a little bit to like who this isn't for. Like, if you're a snacker like I am, like I can't really see myself doing this. Personally, I have attempted the ones with like overnight, and that's a little bit more realistic for me. But to go an entire day without like eating a chunk in between, I don't think that I can do that. Because I'm a snacker, and I know that when I don't snack or if I don't have something, my mood does change. Like, you can't ask me a question when I first get home from work and I didn't eat dinner yet. Like, my boyfriend knows to like let me have my dinner first, and then you could ask me how my day was, because I just like want to eat at that time. So I think, there's that potential risk of, how are you reacting to the hunger? Oh, the other thing I will say is, I think there's a part of intermittent fasting that does work because mentally you're already telling yourself. I think it's a big mental, like that kind of like when there's a will, there's a way, right? So like you're mentally preparing yourself that I'm not eating. So therefore you've already told yourself it's okay, right? So you might react to situations differently because you mentally prepared yourself for it. But yeah, I would still kind of be cautious that you might react to things a little differently when you didn't get food in your system.
Now, what about using supplements to help with fasting if someone is choosing to do that?
To like suppress your appetite?
Well, no, I wasn't thinking about that. That's a separate issue, which I'd certainly like you to elaborate on. But using vitamins, say, and of course, consider that intermittent fasting doesn't mean not discluding drinking water, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to be drinking enough water.
Yeah.
But what about people
and some people will even have like coffee or tea.
Okay.
Yeah. So like
there's
everyone,
different variations.
People do it in differently. But yeah. I mean, how I've talked about supplements before. They're really not. The government doesn't even approve them unless something goes wrong. So
someone who might say, well, I'm taking vitamin C with it, or...
Well, a lot of vitamins too, like if it's water soluble, that's one thing. But if it's fat soluble, you need to eat food with it. So you're not even going to actually absorb it and utilize it the way that your body, it was intended to use. And you also might feel a little nauseous, from taking in vitamins where there's nothing for it to get absorbed with. It might cause some, small side effects if you're doing the dosage. But
now, what about those appetite suppressors? We know that coffee and caffeine can be an appetite suppressor.
Yeah, a lot of people will
but some
do
people
that.
can go much more hardcore with it. Take these pills that really push your appetite down.
Yeah, I don't think you should take anything that's gonna intentionally make your body offset to an extreme level. Caffeine really is a natural appetite suppressant. And a lot of people will do that. They'll have, on their fast, they'll even have what's called bulletproof coffee, where they'll put some butter or coconut oil or something in that to kind of help sustain their energy, and allow them to kind of curb that appetite. I feel like something like that isn't as detrimental. Of course, you don't want to load up on the coconut oil or on the butter, because it's still fat at the end of the day. And depending on what your goal is, if your goal is weight loss, you don't want to overdo that. But I mean, that's not as harmful, I would say, as taking a supplement that's an appetite suppressant.
So what would be dangerous? I know it might be obvious, but what would be dangerous about taking a really strong appetite suppressant while fasting?
It could create longer periods of time without eating. If the intention is, to go like say 12 to 14 hours or whatever. And now it's like, because if you keep taking them, you're able to go like 2 days. Like, that's not good, right? We don't want prolonged periods of time without eating, because you have to remember, not eating also means not giving your body nutrition, right? So yes, you're going to have less calories and you might lose weight, but you could create deficiencies if you're doing it for a prolonged period of time. And I don't know, like, there's so many side effects with certain things. It could, who knows what it's doing to your stomach. I to be honest, like, I can't really speak to supplements because they're not something that I really support. So I don't invest my time and energy into looking them up and researching them, because if it's not something that's FDA approved, I'm not looking at it, to be frank. So.
And even now, like with even like vitamin supplements, they're questioning the effectiveness. Some studies are questioning the effectiveness of even taking
because it's always best absorbed through food, and it's just, I mean, if you want to take supplements as like a safety blanket, as a security blanket, fine, but keep to the dosage and try not to take multiple different things at one time, because things interact with each other, and you're better off just getting like one basic multivitamin, and have that.
Cool. So is there anything else you want to add to the topic of intermittent fasting? Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
Not that I can think of.
All right.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
Nothing. No questions come to mind. And if obviously if our listeners have any questions, you can always submit a question by email at GymWits@gmail.com, or ask the trainer or ask the dietitian.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to end, or just like kind of drive home the fact that this is not a quick fix to weight loss or whatever, reason why you're starting it. It's just an alternative strategy. And to remember that if it's something that works for you, like if you for doing it for religious reasons, maybe, and you have no choice but to stop eating from sunset to from sunrise to sundown, or whatever it is for your religion, that's a different story, right? Because that's going to be something you're doing for most of your life, right? But if you're doing it for a short duration of time, for a quick fix, or it doesn't fit with your lifestyle, then it's just going to be another thing that, yes, works initially, and then you go back to your old ways and the weight comes back on and all those things. So, once again, this is more for someone who feels like this is going to help them long term. And just be careful, because the studies are not conclusive. We're not really sure quite yet. So just be cautious.
Yep. Of course, bringing it back to what I had mentioned in the beginning, if you see someone who's young and in shape and potentially airbrushed, or trying to sell a intermittent fasting system or something like that, just, it's too good to be true. We always say it.
Right. Or what's your slogan? The truth does not sell.
Bingo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, we haven't asked the dietitian question.
Oh, we do.
So it comes from Dale, and Dale asks, "Hey guys, I'm an older man. I've never really paid much attention to dieting, but after a recent health scare, my doctor told me that I should eat better. Are there any good books or resources for a beginner on eating healthy? Thanks, and love the show."
So there is, and I'm just going to get my phone out because I don't want to butcher the name. Okay, so I really, of course, it's written by a registered dietitian because I love the profession. So, and I think they're a reliable resource. So if you're looking for, and this is probably for not just for Dan, first of all, thank you for writing in, but for anyone who's looking for just like simple, like healthy solutions for everything from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and to how to kind of meal prep and plan ahead. It's called the Healthy Meal Prep Cookbook, and it's by Toby Amador, MSRD CDN. So the Healthy Meal Prep Cookbook by Toby Amador, MSRD CDN. It's really an easy way to cook, prep, grab and go meals. And along while teaching you how to do that, it is explaining why and the nutrition behind it. So I think that you'll really enjoy it because I actually love it. So
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as usual, if you have a question, whether it's Ask the Trainer or Ask the Dietitian, send it in. Again, TheGymWits@gmail.com, or go to TheGymWits.com, and we have forms there for you to submit. As usual, our social media is all there. Where can people find you, Tony?
On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, Tips with Tony, Tony with an I.
Awesome. Well, I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, once again reminding you that truth does not sell.
And
I'm Tony Marinucci, aka Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian.
And we are the
GymWits.
GymWits.